Feedback is coming in on Miami's second weekend of official visits, and we believe the Hurricanes are trending to land the following players.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Sunday. I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC, and writer for Canes County at Rivals. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. On this episode of Locked On Canes, you're going to love this. You can actually help Miami's NIL by playing more video games. We will explain. Mario Cristobal has been named one of the top 2 recruiting head coaches in the country. That's obviously a very good sign. And in order to keep that reputation, let's talk about this second weekend of big-time official visits and who Miami's going to land. Let's break it down with our very good friend. He's the host of The Portal podcast here on the Locked On Network. Brian Smith, the recruiting overlord, is with us. And so, Brian, I want to start here with elite interior offensive lineman Breck Kolojay out of IMG Academy. He's just leaving his Miami visit this morning. He said it was fantastic. He told Kane Sport, I just got to spend a lot of time with the players, so that was really huge for me, just experiencing the culture and feeling like a player, because ultimately that will determine whether I fit in. Not saying I won't fit in, because I'll fit in anywhere I go, but having that connection with the guys is huge for me, and I just got to feel that this official visit, so it was really special. And I noticed, Brian, he spent a lot of time on the visit with Jackson Cantwell, which is a good thing. Do you put Miami right at or near the top for Breck Kolojay?
Well, this has been pretty consistent for him. When I spoke to him earlier this year at IMG, Georgia and Miami were the top programs that we talked about. And we're now in June, and we're talking about Georgia and Miami again. So he's got the UGA visit, I believe, coming up. But I knew that Miami was doing a great job with him. He's always had a great relationship with Mario and with Alex. So you get your O-line coach, and your head coach is really an O-line coach too, having great recruiting relationships with a guy like this. And he's been to Miami, I don't even know how many times, because he used to go with Maui Noah and some of the other guys. I think this is a really good chance for Miami here. He's arguably the best interior offensive lineman in the country. He's certainly in the conversation. Probably Dogs or probably Canes, one of the two. This is very important for Miami. And if they get him, they might end up with the top O-line class in the country. It's very possible.
And they're actually, Brian, they're trying to sign 7 in this cycle. They have 5 verbally committed right now. Kolojay is one that they want. We'll talk in a minute about Canon, Pickett, who they want. Like, how often do you see that? And I understand why they're doing it, because they got a bunch of guys that are heading into their final years. So the offensive line is going to lose a ton of guys, hopefully to the pros in a year's time from right now. So they need to load up in this class. But how often do you see cycles where one team takes 7 offensive linemen?
Very rare. The only time you really see that is if they've got JUCO kids or something like that. But not many teams are able to get the kids that Miami is able to land too. O-line, as we've talked about many times on this show, Alex, it's the winner or the loser position. For if you look at the top tier college football, how many of them do you say they don't have a very, very good O-line? It's pretty rare. You got to get the high school kids. That's what Mario is trying to do, and his staff across the board, not just Alex Mirabal. They've done a good job of recruiting in their areas across the country, New Jersey, Texas, wherever. They're trying to bring them in for visits. And Kolojay is originally from Colorado. Maui Noah is originally from an island out in the Pacific. Like, they go wherever the talent is. So you got to give them a lot of credit. They focused on a position that helps you win ball games.
Yeah, and so another one that Miami is after, and by the way, I think a decision's going to come pretty soon for him, probably a little over a week from now. I don't think he has a firm timeline, but Canon Pickett, I'm receiving more positive feedback, Brian, about Canon, about Miami being the leader for him. So I'll drop a Donno ball for Canon Pickett at about an 8 out of 10 certainty. I think he's going to end up being a Cane, but it does sound like he is going to follow through with his third official visit. He's visited Clemson and Miami already, and it does sound like he will follow through with an OV to Florida this weekend. So the Gators are going to look to change that narrative in their favor. But what can you tell us about Canon Pickett and his process and his decision coming up?
He's been very methodical with it, like Breck Kolojay, who's one of his buddies that they play on the same 5-on-5 team with California Power. He's went across the country, done his due diligence, and obviously has very strong ties to the University of Miami with his brother there, his father, et cetera, being a Cane. But he's also a guy that's looked at it pretty open. He's not trying to just dive right in. He wanted to do it the right way, and all the unofficial visits have helped him not have to take as many OVs, not have to wait as long. I think your timeline's pretty good with that. And he'd told me that it'd be hard for him to leave the state at one point, but Clemson, I mean, that's right down the road from Florida. Yeah. That would be the other one. And everything he said has been very consistent. I also think he will end up at Miami, but UF has been recruiting very, very well. So I would not discount the Gators, and they definitely need O-line help. So that is a very interesting official visit.
Well, let's go on a side note here. A player who didn't visit this weekend, but the previous weekend, since you bring up Florida and that they're suddenly recruiting well. For a long time, they had one verbal commit. So the dam is starting to break there in Gainesville. They're starting to land some players. And so a top receiver who visited Miami last week, Somourian Wingo, who some people I think around Miami felt pretty good about, has visited Florida, and there are crystal balls coming in left and right for Wingo to pick Florida over Miami. Do you believe that's probably where this is trending?
Well, that was the situation probably 3-4 months ago that I thought it would be, but I was waiting to see if Georgia or Florida State or Auburn or somebody else, but it's Florida and Miami. All the rumors are UF. Will Miami make another run at him? Will they get him back on campus if he does commit? Those are things that I'm curious about. Miami's famous for flipping kids later in the process. But right now, that's a Gator area up in Jacksonville. I mean, he lives probably an hour and 20 minutes from Gainesville. I'm not shocked if that's where he goes, but I wouldn't be surprised if Miami still makes another run at him. And regardless of where he goes, Miami doesn't give up very much.
Yeah, I got to wonder if Miami's going to be able to hopefully land some blue chip receivers in this class, because there are others that the Hurricanes are in it for, including the top receiver in the country who visited the previous weekend. We'll talk about him. And we'll talk about some more important players on the line of scrimmage who are just finishing up their Miami visits today. So you want to keep it locked right here. We have the recruiting overlord, Brian Smith, with us. We'll talk more recruiting and why Mario Cristobal is one of the top 2 in the country when it comes to head coaches recruiting. You want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new Locked On Canes. And folks, we're only getting started with FanDuel. I mean, this is the time, guys. The NHL Stanley Cup playoffs and the NBA playoffs, the finals for both, are in full swing right now. And FanDuel is where you get all the action, guys. Every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action than right now. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Guys, I love the in-game live betting because sometimes you'll have a hunch before the game, but things get clear after the game starts and the odds will update throughout. It's really a lot of fun. And folks, if you're new to FanDuel, it is the perfect time to sign up. You can head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. And, something that I brought up, Brian, on our Friday episode, I think it's really important that on this OV weekend that's wrapping up now at Miami, 17 total prospects, but 6 of them are verbal commits, guys who are already committed to Miami. Because I love when you can mix a bunch of those guys in with the undecided players to help influence the decisions. And I got to give credit to Jackson Cantwell. I know that he said in an interview that he wasn't in full recruiting mode. He was kind of letting guys see it for themselves. But I saw all the photos. He was hanging out with Kolojay. He's hanging out with Canon Pickett. He's tweeting to all these guys. He's active on social media. So I think Jackson Cantwell has been recruiting other guys to Miami. And by the way, Cantwell, to his credit, he has shut down everything since committing to Miami. He has been all in on the U, and I think he's become an ambassador for this class because, Brian, I mean, guys, especially offensive line guys like Kolojay and Pickett, alphas want to play with other alphas, right?
Absolutely. You want to play with the best players, and you want a chance to win a lot of football games. I think him being on campus, being involved with the other offensive linemen in a position that typically bond, and if you're going to get a great class, they've got to do that on the visits. This is how you do it. So good for Jackson Cantwell, good for Miami. That's what you got to do because they're battling Georgia for Kolojay, Florida, and some other schools. Like, this is not easy, but it will certainly help to have the big fellow back on campus.
All right, so somebody I'm curious about here, Brian, a receiver who visited Miami this weekend. I don't know how great I feel about this one, but I know Miami's been chipping away here. 4-star wide receiver Braden Robinson. I've seen some stuff indicating Notre Dame is probably the favorite for Robinson right now. Do you agree with that? And can you give us a scouting report? Because I don't think this is a player you and I have talked about.
Let's start with the scouting report. He is ridiculous fast. I saw him when he was coming out of 8th grade, and he was running with kids that were seniors. He was playing with an elite 7-on-7 program in Texas, and he was like the fastest guy on the field. So this is a game changer as a return guy, as a slot receiver, and can't tackle him in a phone booth. So the player that you're looking for that's exciting like a video game, that's who Braden Robinson is. As for his recruitment, he had an early offer from Ohio State. So that puts things in perspective. He can play. They don't miss much on wide receiver evals. Notre Dame, Miami thing is interesting because they're both in on a ton of receivers. I have 2 questions. Number one, who commits first and where? You can only take so many guys if you're Notre Dame or Miami, and they're both going after so many elite players. The timing of it, I think, is important. Like, he's got his Notre Dame visit coming up. I think it's the June 13th weekend. Does somebody else that Notre Dame's brought in before him or that same weekend commit first? How does that work? And Notre Dame's already got a slot receiver. So I think this one's a little more 50-50 than some other people might think. But the word on the street is Notre Dame. But I don't think it's necessarily that way because there's just so many guys involved for both schools. This is going to play out very interestingly.
Over the past week or so, what have you been hearing about Tristan Keys? Like it seemed, and he's the 5-star top receiver in the class. He visited Miami last weekend, the weekend of May 31st. And I'm not going to say I think Miami's the favorite or anything, but I do think the Hurricanes are trending higher in his recruitment after the visit than they were before the visit. He recently signed a big NIL deal with Adidas. Miami is an Adidas school, which would give more NIL opportunities to Miami and Texas A&M, who's an Adidas school. All of his other schools are Nike schools. What are you hearing, Brian? Is it still, obviously he's still committed to LSU, but there's a ton of other schools that are trying to flip Keys.
This is really, really convoluted. The whole thing with the brands now getting involved, this is new for me. There are a few kids that have signed with other organizations similar to Adidas, but they're committed to other schools, but that seems weird. Like Chris Henry Jr., he's going to Ohio State. That's a Nike school, if I remember right, but he's either Under Armour or somebody else. So I don't know how this works, but I would have to assume it can't hurt Miami's chances. I would think there would be more opportunities for NIL at the Adidas program, which Miami is. And as you said, the Aggies are as well. So that's interesting. But I also think this is going to come down to how LSU season goes. I think this is a long, slow, drawn-out recruit. I know fans hate that, but that's what this is going to be. I think along with another certain receiver that is named Calvin Russell, Miami fans are going to have to wait out receiver recruiting until National Signing Day in a lot of different ways. I don't care if they commit or they don't commit in the summer. It's going to be a National Signing Day deal for both. That's my opinion. To that end, Miami's had Keys on campus not once, not twice, but 3 times since the beginning of January. That's really impressive because he doesn't live that far from LSU. It's like 2.5, 3-hour drive, something like that. It's not that big a deal. But now Miami's had him on campus 3 times, and they really need a blue chip receiver that can come in and shake things up. LSU's not struggling at receiver, I can assure you. So there's different opportunities. I would not be surprised if it's a Miami LSU deal at the end, just my opinion. And again, the Adidas thing makes me think about this differently. This is kind of new territory for me. It's fascinating.
It sure is. And I do want to talk in a little bit about how the House settlement is going to change all of this stuff when it comes to NIL, because they did pass that settlement on Friday. But a couple of big-time defensive tackles have been on campus this weekend. 4-star James Johnson out of Miami Northwestern, formerly North Fort Myers. He moved over to South Florida, which obviously can't hurt Miami because he's a lot closer to Coral Gables now. I believe he's probably the top defensive tackle target. Miami, though, also had Bryce Perry-Wright on campus, a 5-star defensive tackle who's he's a little on the smaller side, but he's got this crazy motor. It's a great player. What are you hearing about the recruitment of Bryce Perry-Wright? I know I've seen some Clemson smoke for him and some predictions for him to land there. And James Johnson, if you think he could end up a Cane.
Well, let's start with Bryce Perry-Wright. It's a kid I've met before. Auburn, Tennessee, and all the normal area programs that recruit the greater Atlanta area. He's a kid that plays at Buford. Everybody recruits Buford. And it's not a very difficult situation to figure out. They always got kids. Miami was going to go there too. They got him on campus, but Clemson is the other school in state for D linemen. Like Georgia didn't go after him early, and Clemson was one of those schools always hanging around, and they really went after him here lately. That's what I've heard too. But Miami gets their chance with the OB, and Miami's probably a school he's not nearly as familiar with as Clemson. So I think the longer this goes, the better it is for Miami. And again, Miami is famous for flipping kids later on in the process. We'll see what he does, but right now Clemson's the school I'd watch, but I don't think this is anywhere near done. Got SEC programs like Auburn still after him. NIL will be a factor, and he's at a program where every school in the country is going to continue to come by in the fall. This could be drawn out a little bit longer, regardless of what Bryce Perry-Wright does in his commitment. As for James Johnson, that's one of the hardest ones to figure out in the country. I've heard everything in the Sun about him, Texas, Florida, Miami, etc. I wouldn't touch a prediction on that one with a 10-foot pole. I think we got to get through all the visits to really have an idea. This one could go down again to signing day. It would not surprise me.
Wow. All right. So, part of the awesome show that you do, and by the way, Brian does a great job hosting the portal. You talk all things transfer portal. We are now in the slow season for the transfer portal, but you also talk recruiting. There's never a slow season for recruiting, but all of this stuff, transfer portal, recruiting, this is all affected by NIL and this House settlement. The Judge Claudia Wilkin, after months of deliberations, officially approved the House versus NCAA settlement on Friday. And okay, so a big part of this is now, theoretically, most of the income that players make is going to come from this revenue sharing agreement where they're going to get paid now directly by schools. They're going to have a cap of up to $20.5 million, which will be distributed among all student athletes, not just football, although we expect about 90% of that budget is going to go to football and basketball, the revenue sports. So, you're talking about maybe a $15-16 million budget towards football rosters every single year. But if I'm led to believe comments made by certain coaches, apparently Miami spends like $200 million on NIL every year. Some people will try to make you think. And then also, so collectives, I guess, will still exist or can still exist, and NIL from outside the school can still exist. But one of the issues, Brian, is they're talking about any NIL deal from, a non, third party. If it's over $600, which is not a lot for an NIL deal, if it's over $600, it has to go through a clearinghouse, and they have to determine like the legitimacy of the NIL deal. I feel like they're going to get sued into oblivion when they try to enforce this. What are you thinking? How this whole House settlement is going to change recruiting and NIL?
Well, for that to be from the Warriors that I spoke with, that are certainly more versed in this area than you got to make them employees to make that specific unless they get an antitrust law. Yeah. But like some of the other ones, I spoke to multiple people. There's some, at least short term, they think this might hold a little bit and it'll be challenged, and they're just going to try to hold it up in the courts. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. I'm sure they're going to fight it, but like Tennessee, I don't know if you saw this a little bit back, that state, because of the Vols, has put forth like, we're not going to, whatever they do, we don't care. Remember, they already did this as a law.
Right.
Now this gets into the federal versus state. And let's just be honest, politics These people want to stay in power. And when their fan bases are mad and go to them, if they don't support the local team, so this is going to be very convoluted. If you've got a powerhouse program with a big base, like Tennessee's fan base is massive, even if they don't agree with it, there's nobody in that state that's going to openly speak out against it. So we're going to get a lot of people who don't agree. It has nothing to do with honesty. It's just about trying to stay in power. It's no different than Republicans and Democrats. It's the same crap. So I think that's going to play into it. But who's going to be the first one to sue is basically what you're asking. And it's the same thing that I am. I think there will be a different couple of law firms that are probably prominent that it would get with some players and say, if we want to do a deal over here, we can, because they're trying to say, how much is a player worth? Well, how do you evaluate that? Because this is a capitalistic society. If somebody wants to pay you more, that's like a car dealership. If you're going to do a couple of different ads for them, like Messiah Hampton's already done one, the receiver Miami's going after. He's already got a car dealership deal. Like I've seen the video. Wow. If they do that, how can you say, well, it's only worth this? If that dealership wants to pay him an extra $500, whatever, I don't see how you can do that. And it's, again, this is very touchy politically. You're not messing with pro athletes. A lot of these are 17 to 19-year-olds. It doesn't look good politically for you to say, no, you can't do that. So I'm curious to see how staunch they are. And I think, like Tennessee's already said it, go ahead and try to pin. Are you really going to force Tennessee not to play or something if they don't do it, brother? There's no way, because the TV networks want that team that gets massive following on TV for all their advertisers. I don't think they've got any enforcement power, especially, again, with the political stuff. Yeah. I think this is going to collapse a lot more than the ADs think, and the public outcry, again, because it's young people we're talking about, not 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds with the money. I don't think that's going to go nearly as well as they think. And I still think the collectives, worst case scenario, they're just going back to the old way of doing it. They're just going to pay guys under the table. You are not going to take power away from those people, rightly or wrongly. So I think this is going to be a mess, a real big mess.
You made so many great points, including how difficult it is to enforce this stuff without making players employees and having collective bargaining, because I should have made that distinction. I'm glad you did, because I've had a couple of comments from listeners who are like, well, hey, at least now players are employees and they get 401ks and benefits. No, they're not employees. They do not get any of those things. That's not what this is. It's just NIL by another name. You're instead of your check coming, from Collective XYZ, your biggest check is going to come from the university now. That's all that it is. So this is going to be fun to cover. That's for sure. And this does make me want to reach out to some lawyers, because we have some lawyers like Darren Heitner, who are friends of the show, who I should have him on again really soon. But when we come back, there's a former Florida Gator commit who may be Miami bound. I want to get Brian's take. And I'll tell you, you want to help Miami with NIL? Start playing more video games. I'll explain what I mean next here on Locked On Canes. Thank you for making this special Sunday episode your first listen and your first watch today. I don't even know what day of I know it's Sunday now. I have no idea what day of the week it is most days. I'm over in Europe, and people have been like, usually when I leave town, especially if I leave the country, Miami usually gets a bunch of verbal commitments. So people are mad at me that I've been out of the country for 9 days. We don't have any new commitments. Hopefully soon. Now, Brian, a former Florida Gators commit, Devin Jackson, the safety, he visited Miami this past weekend. He's got a good relationship with Will Harris, who recruited him to Florida. I think he's got a good relationship with Jalen Seatbelt Waters as well, who also visited this weekend, that could have helped recruit him. Do you think Devin Jackson is going to end up being a Cane?
Well, he was recruited by the guy that is now at the University of Miami in the secondary. That helps. As we always say, follow the visits, follow the relationships. Like, that's my guess. And again, I don't know what Florida, it's not that hard to sell UF, the SEC school in the state of Florida, but they're on the hot seat. Miami staff is not. So they got a new defensive staff, et cetera. We'll see how this goes. But I think Miami's probably the landing spot, but it has been for a while. Like, it needs to come to fruition sometime in the next 2 to 3 weeks for me to feel really good about it. But that's when most of the kids are going to make their decision. So as long as they get this done by July 4th, maybe a little before, I like Miami. Let's see if he takes any other visits or backs it up on when he wants to commit. But Devin Jackson's really good. He's actually on my short list. I put down a handful of names I'll talk about in a second that like Miami needs to get a few of these kids to like finish the class, have a balanced class, and get the program to another notch and take it to a level where they can start competing for championships. And Devin's one of those guys. He's really, really good.
Well, and let me pull this up, by the way. This, I don't know what kind of responses you got around the country from this, Brian, but we're looking at, this is Brian Smith's list here. These thoughts are his, although I do co-sign on his. I agree with this. He's got Mario Cristobal ranked really high here. So what this is Brian's list of top recruiting college football head coaches, not an overall ranking, because when I posted this, a bunch of Oregon fans, whiny Oregon fans who still have their agendas, I'll do my whiny Oregon fan voice was, hey, how can you make Mario Cristobal number 2? You got to dump him down out of the top 12 because he can't make game day decisions. This list is just recruiting. And I put it in all caps. I posted recruiting in all caps. So you've got Mario Cristobal behind only Kirby Smart as the number 2 recruiter in America. How did you end up settling with number 2 for Cristobal? What was the thought process that went into this?
It's because of his long-term ability to recruit. As an assistant, he's been a guy that was at FIU, helped rebuild that program. He helped rebuild Oregon. He's a guy that, well, I mean, this may be the biggest one. He learned under none other than Nick Saban when he was at Alabama. That kind of helps. Like the overall track record, it's always been very good. And he does the same thing that I completely believe in. So I'm biased in this. He believes in building through the trenches first. And again, look at the teams that made deep runs in the playoffs last year. What did they do well? Offensive and defensive line. Well, Mario has really done a well job across the board everywhere he's been. But at Miami, like, think about the first year you and I were covering Miami when he was there. Holy cow, the offensive line was terrible. It was hard to watch. But within one cycle, they were pretty good. And then last year, I mean, that offensive line was one of the better in the country. And now to the point where I think they will be consistently a Joe Moore Award winner. So that was the base. And then Miami is one of 5 to 7 schools, I would say, nationally, is as good as anybody in going in somebody else's backyard and getting a really good recruit. A Texas kid from Ohio, could be a kid from New Jersey. It's hard to do that. And they're even getting kids out of like they got Weidman. They flipped that kid from Georgia. Georgia doesn't lose many kids in state to anybody else that they want. They've done it. So he's earned that right.
I love that. Mario Cristobal, number 2 on that list. We'll close out with this. I know you guys are going to love this because everywhere. I'm not a big video game guy. I don't get the sense you are either, right? I mean, you're always you're touching actual grass, like you're out there scouting players. Do you play the EA college football game often?
I haven't played the new one. I know there's this year's version. I was told they've made a bunch of improvements. I expect it to be out in July. I heard it's a little more realistic. There aren't some special plays that everybody can just win with, and defenders can't have their back to the ball and still get interceptions and stuff like that. But I heard Bud Elliott talk about he saw one of the copies and he did some overview on it. But I probably should play it just out of curiosity, but I have not yet.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say this loud and clear because it's mostly Miami fans listening to this. If you're a Florida State fan or a Florida fan, just turn the video or the podcast off. I don't want to give you guys any tips here. But I was just reading this the other day on CanesInsight.com. This is a report from Matt Lieberman from CLLCT Media. He says EA Sports, starting with the next game that comes out, like Brian said, probably in July, EA Sports will pay universities based on how frequently their teams are featured in gameplay. So if you're a Miami fan, the more you play with Miami, the more money EA is going to give to Miami, which I assume that goes into the revenue sharing pot. So you can actually help your team raise more money to pay players by playing the video game. And I mentioned this, Brian, that I got the game last year, and I'm not a big video game guy. I played it for like a week, and then, I haven't really played it since because, there's just, and I'm not saying I'm like a big outdoorsman. I don't know. There's just other stuff that I spend my time doing. So I haven't played the game in months, but if I can actually get Miami more revenue sharing money, more money from EA. I'm going to spend like 10 hours a day playing this thing. Let's get those NIL dollars up.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's, to the winner goes the spoils, and Miami's got a lot of fans. Why not help out your squad? So I'm sure Ohio State and Texas and Georgia and all those fan bases do the same. So you should support Miami and use Miami in the dynasty mode or whatever else they can do.
Yeah. I mean, listen, if you're too broke to donate to the collective, but you buy the video game this year, just spend countless hours playing the video game, and that's going to be your way of making NIL donations. So we can all help the university together. I appreciate your time. Brian Smith does an awesome job. Make sure you check out the Portal podcast. Doing an incredible job covering recruiting, NIL, house settlement, which is the hot topic over the last couple of days, and I'm sure will be a hot topic for the coming months. And transfer portal, of course, you want to check him out at FBScout_Florida and at LO_the portal. Those are his X accounts. You can check me out at Locked On Canes and at Alex Donno. And we'll talk to you again next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.